Have you ever wondered why some people navigate life with unshakable confidence, seemingly oblivious to obstacles, while others are endlessly plagued by self-doubt, as if trapped by invisible chains? Why is it that for some, making the most difficult decisions is but a fleeting moment, yet for others, it's a paralyzing fear of judgment? The answer, perhaps, lies in an ancient manuscript crafted over 5 centuries ago. Its author, a man simultaneously scorned and revered, whose works were censored and yet deeply studied, cursed by the clergy and sought for advice by the world's rulers, continues to spark fervent debate to this day. His name is Niccolò Machiavelli, and his astonishing insights into power, the art of governance, and the very essence of human nature might just be the key that will shatter your inner insecurity once and for all. Machiavelli was no mere armchair theorist. He was a child of his time, an era of incredible instability, where mere survival depended on the ability to instantly read people, anticipate an opponent's every move, and make swift, unerring decisions. With piercing clarity, he observed how true power functioned, not the idealized and refined power philosophers wrote about, but raw, pragmatic, yet unfailingly effective power, the very force that truly moves the world. And what he discovered was nothing short of a revolution. Machiavelli realized that insecurity isn't just a personal weakness. It's an insidious social trap, keeping us confined within behavioral patterns that prevent us from unleashing our true limitless potential. With striking precision, he identified the psychological mechanisms that allow some people to master situations while others are condemned to submit. And like a skilled alchemist, he created a practical guide for anyone yearning to break the chains of insecurity. Prepare for a journey that will challenge all your preconceptions about confidence, power, and success. Let us delve into the abyss of one of history's most controversial thinkers and learn how his lessons can completely transform your self-perception and how the world sees you. Insecurity, at its core, is not a character flaw. It is an ancient, primitive defense system that our brains developed to protect us from dangers in hostile environments. The tragedy is that we continue to use this system in situations where it is not only unnecessary but frankly destructive. Machiavelli understood this 5 centuries ago. In his monumental work, The Prince, he wrote about the vital necessity for a leader to possess the qualities of both a fox and a lion. The fox, in his vision, symbolizes cunning, agility, and the ability to navigate the most intricate labyrinths using only the power of intellect. The lion, on the other hand, embodies might, the ability to impose one's will when circumstances demand it. But there is a third animal that Machiavelli undoubtedly observed, though he rarely mentioned it directly: the sheep. The sheep is one who unquestioningly follows the flock, who constantly seeks approval, who prefers the perceived security of conformity to the risk of individuality. The sheep lives in a perpetual state of insecurity, for its self-worth depends entirely on the opinions of others. And here lies Machiavelli's truly revolutionary idea. Society needs sheep to function. This is precisely why it actively cultivates insecurity in people. Consider this for a moment. From early childhood, you were taught to seek approval. In your school years, you were praised for answers teachers wanted to hear, not necessarily for those that were truthful and independent. At work, you are promoted for fitting perfectly into the corporate culture, not for daring to challenge it. In social life, you are accepted into a group for adhering to its unspoken norms, not for genuinely expressing your authentic individuality. Machiavelli understood that this dynamic creates a self-perpetuating, vicious cycle. The more you crave external approval, the more insecure you become because your self-worth becomes hostage to factors beyond your control. And the more insecure you become, the easier you are to manipulate and control. But there is a way out of this labyrinth. Machiavelli discovered that true leaders, those capable of wielding real and lasting power, operate on a completely different set of principles. They don't seek approval, they crave respect. They don't fear condemnation, they fear becoming irrelevant. They aren't concerned with being loved, they care only about their own effectiveness. This difference is fundamental. When you seek approval, you are constantly reacting to external impulses. When you strive for respect, you act based on your own unshakable values and clearly defined goals. The first approach condemns you to the position of a perpetual follower. The second paves the way for genuine leadership. Machiavelli called this virtù, an Italian word with no precise English equivalent, but one that encompasses elements of courage, competence, adaptability, and unwavering resolve. But what happens to those who dare to go against the current, who choose the path of the fox and the lion instead of the fate of the sheep? What price do they pay for their courage? The answers to these questions might shake you to your core. Machiavelli, like no other, saw how quickly the crowd was ready to tear apart anyone who dared to be themselves. He witnessed how powerful figures, who had achieved everything imaginable, found themselves at rock bottom in an instant, forgotten and betrayed. His life was filled with ups and downs, triumphs and cruel blows of fate, each only strengthening his conviction. The world is harsh, and only those who understand its rules can survive. Perhaps if Machiavelli had not experienced such a tragic end, his works would have been merely an academic exercise. But his personal drama, his fall from the heights of power into the abyss of oblivion, lends his words the weight of prophecy. Will his lessons remain unheard? Or can we finally break free from the grip of insecurity, using wisdom that has come down through the ages? What do you think? Did he have a chance to change his fate? Or was his end inevitable in the world he described so thoroughly? Let us know in the comments at what point you believe he ultimately stumbled or, conversely, made the only correct decision. If this story resonates with you, give it a like. And to avoid missing new dramas where the price of glory was too high, subscribe to the channel. Have you ever wondered what lies behind the facade of great personalities? What allows some to rise above the crowd, while others forever remain in the shadows? Today, we will delve into a world where the rules of the game are set not by morality, but by stark reality, where intrigues intertwine with calculation, and every step is a chess match where more than just victory is at stake. We will uncover secrets that have been guarded for centuries and show how ordinary people transform into architects of their own destiny, even if it means resorting to the most shocking actions. Prepare to learn why. Some are doomed to oblivion and others to eternal glory, and how a single misconception can lead to a catastrophic end. What if everything you knew about power and influence was just an illusion? Stay with us until the end to see the true face of power. The history of humanity is an endless drama, where the main characters have always been those who possess not only intelligence, but also a special inner strength called valor and resolve. It is this virtù, the antithesis of all insecurity, that the great Niccolò Machiavelli extolled. It is not just courage, but a deep self-confidence that allows one to make the toughest decisions, take conscious risks, and stand unshakable in the face of the most severe trials. But how does one cultivate this virtù? How does one transform from a timid sheep into a confident leader of the pack? The answer lies in the very principles Machiavelli uncovered by keenly examining the mechanisms of power in human nature. Machiavelli once made a chilling observation that still makes many shudder today. Appearance always surpasses true reality. He asserted that people judge more by what they see with their eyes than by what they feel with their hands. For sight is accessible to many, but true understanding is given to only a few. This means that others' opinions of you are formed primarily based on external manifestations, not on the deep essence of things. And here lies the main paradox that can lead to tragic consequences. If you constantly torment yourself with thoughts about what others will say about you, you unconsciously transmit your own insecurity, thereby prompting others to think even worse of you. It is a kind of self-fulfilling prophecy, dooming one to failure. Machiavelli carefully noted that the most successful leaders were true virtuosos in the art of self-presentation. They perfectly understood that confidence, like insecurity, possesses an infectious power. When you present yourself to the world with genuine confidence, not with arrogance, but with authentic conviction born of competence and deep self-knowledge, people naturally begin to trust you. But how does one cultivate this true, unfeigned confidence? Machiavelli identified three cornerstones upon which this power rests. First, undeniable competence. It's impossible to feign confidence for long if it's not backed by necessary skills and knowledge. Machiavelli was ruthless on this point. Learn, train, perfect your craft. Empty, unsubstantiated confidence is easily exposed and crumbles like a house of cards, leaving behind only bitter disappointment. Second, severe, merciless self-knowledge. Machiavelli believed that self-deception is the greatest enemy of true strength. You must know your strengths and weaknesses with surgical precision, without the slightest illusion. Only when you absolutely understand what you are capable of and what you are not, do you gain unshakable confidence based on reality, not on castles in the air. Third, masterful narrative control. Machiavelli deeply understood that each of us, to some extent, is a character in a grand social drama. The question is simply, who directs this performance? Do you consciously guide your role, or do you allow others to write your script? When you actively control how you present yourself to the world, you stop being a hostage to others' perceptions and become the architect of your own image. This doesn't mean pretense or manipulation. It means a strategic approach to how your authentic qualities are conveyed to and perceived by others. Machiavelli was well aware that even the noblest intentions and outstanding abilities could be wasted if they couldn't be properly presented. Just think about it. Surely you know people who possess exceptional competence but are constantly underestimated because they lack the art of presenting themselves appropriately. And you have probably also met those who, despite being quite mediocre, nevertheless achieve influential positions because they have perfectly mastered the art of personal presentation. Machiavelli did not condone the latter category. He warned that in an ideal world, competence and the ability to present oneself should go hand in hand. When you combine real ability with strategic self-presentation, you become a truly unstoppable force. Insecurity makes us obsessively focus on our flaws and downplay our strengths. Machiavelli, however, proposed a completely opposite approach. Acknowledge your weaknesses to find ways to compensate for them, but direct all your energy toward developing and demonstrating your strengths. This simple shift in perspective can completely transform how others perceive you. One of Machiavelli's most paradoxical discoveries concerned the very essence of fear. He observed that most people spend their lives tormented by fears of being hurt. This is the fear of rejection, of judgment, the fear of conflict. However, true leaders operate with a completely different mindset. They make others far more concerned about losing them than they themselves worry about losing others. Perhaps if the protagonists of our story had realized these principles earlier, their fate would have been different, or perhaps they would have faded into the shadows, preserving themselves and those they lost. What do you think? Did they have a chance to change everything, or was their end inevitable? Share your thoughts in the comments on when you believe they ultimately stumbled. If this story resonates with you, give it a like. And to avoid missing new dramas, subscribe to the channel. Here we talk about those whose fame was real, but whose price was too high. Have you ever wondered what lies behind the facade of power and influence? What if the most powerful people in the world possessed a secret that allowed them to be both revered and even a little intimidating? Today we will unveil ancient knowledge that has been misinterpreted for centuries, but which can completely change your life. You will learn how to gain such inner strength that people will naturally seek to be near you, and your insecurity will simply vanish. We will show you how to avoid the traps of dependency and why even the most humble person can become the absolute prince of their own inner world. Prepare for revelations that will make you rethink everything you knew about influence and self-governance. This isn't about being callous or calculating. It's about becoming so significant, so skilled, so unwavering in your convictions that people instinctively desire your presence. When a person develops this quality, their anxieties and doubts dissipate, for they no longer need anyone's approval. Others naturally crave their attention. Niccolò Machiavelli called this the ability to be simultaneously awe-inspiring and loved, but his ideas have been mistakenly interpreted for centuries. He wasn't talking about physical or emotional coercion. He meant developing such high personal value that people, without compulsion, begin to respect you and seek to maintain harmonious relationships with you. How does one cultivate such personal value? Machiavelli identified several key strategies. First, become indispensable. Develop skills, knowledge, or qualities that are rare and highly valued. When you are the one who can resolve difficulties that others cannot, your position naturally becomes strong and undeniable. Second, maintain high standards. One reason insecure people are sometimes underestimated is that they constantly lower their expectations to please others. Machiavelli noted that truly effective leaders do exactly the opposite. They uphold their high standards and expect others to strive to meet them. This creates a fascinating psychological dynamic. When you consistently adhere to high expectations, people begin to put more effort into impressing you. They start to value your opinion precisely because they know it's not easily earned. Third, be generous with praise but firm regarding concessions. Machiavelli deeply understood that people respond to both encouragement and consequences. When someone meets your standards, don't be stingy with sincere recognition. But if someone consistently falls short of your expectations, clearly state the consequences. This approach commands deep respect as people realize that your recognition is genuine and your expectations are consistent. They don't have to guess how you perceive them, which reduces anxiety and strengthens trust in relationships. Fourth, always have alternatives. One of the main sources of inner insecurity is an excessive reliance on a single source of approval, income, relationships, or opportunities. Machiavelli was obsessed with the idea of always having a backup plan, and even a third and fourth option. When you have alternatives, you negotiate from a position of strength, not desperate need. This fundamentally changes your energy in any situation. When you desperately need something, be it a relationship or approval, that need is palpable and ironically makes you less attractive. When you desire something but don't desperately need it, you naturally become more confident and appealing. The reverse fear strategy is not about manipulating others, but about becoming such a valuable, competent, and principled individual that others naturally want to maintain positive relationships with you. When you reach this level, insecurity becomes irrelevant because you no longer depend on external approval to feel good about yourself. Machiavelli wrote his immortal work, The Prince, as a guide for rulers, but his deepest lessons concern self-governance. He understood that before leading others, one must first learn to govern oneself. And governing oneself means having complete control over one's thoughts, emotions, and reactions. Insecurity is, in essence, a form of failed self-governance. When a person is insecure, they allow external forces, others' opinions, circumstances, imagined fears, to control their internal state, becoming a puppet king in their own kingdom. Machiavelli proposed a fundamentally different approach. He believed that every individual should become the absolute sovereign of their inner realm. This means taking full responsibility for one's thoughts, feelings, and reactions, regardless of external circumstances. Niccolò Machiavelli's story is, in essence, a chronicle of the struggle for influence and self-determination. His life demonstrated that even in the most turbulent times, a person can find an inner fortress that makes them unshakable. And what, in your opinion, was the most valuable lesson he left the world? What if each of us could apply these principles to become the true ruler of our inner world? Share in the comments which of Machiavelli's strategies you found most effective. If this story has inspired you to personal change, give it a like. And to avoid missing new dramas and revelations about those whose fame was real, but whose price was too high, subscribe to the channel. Deep in history, where throne rooms whispered of cunning and grandeur, one thinker dared to peer into the most hidden corners of the human soul to uncover the secrets of true power. He showed a path to such self-discipline that even the most powerful rulers of his era seemed mere pawns in the game of fate. But what if this very philosophy, which granted them triumph, also became their personal tragedy. What if the price for absolute self-governance proved exorbitantly high? Today, we will lift the veil on his teachings, which can revolutionize your understanding of freedom and control. Prepare yourself, for the ending of this story will make you reflect on your own choices. This philosophical concept at first glance might seem daunting in its uncompromising nature, yet at its core, it offers profound liberation. When an individual stops blaming external circumstances or the actions of others for their internal state, they reclaim the full extent of their personal power. They cease to be a passive observer in someone else's game and become the true creator of their own life path, the architect of their own experience. But how does one develop this Machiavellian self-governance, this internal empire where each person is their own sovereign? The first decisive step lies in an unflinching and truthful gaze at reality. Machiavelli, as is well known, possessed a unique ability to see situations as they truly were, without embellishment or illusion, rather than as he wished them to be. He applied this same ruthless, cold objectivity to self-knowledge, to the study of his own inner world. Begin to observe your thought patterns with the same analytical detachment with which Machiavelli observed the complex political game of his era, its intrigues and upheavals. When you are overcome by a feeling of uncertainty, ask yourself these brutally honest questions. What are the objective facts underlying this situation? What here is a real given, and what is merely a figment of my imagination, a mirage created by my mind? And what are my genuine, real options for action under the current circumstances? Most people in a state of insecurity dwell in a world of assumptions and self-interpretations. They tend to believe that others are judging them, interpret perfectly neutral events as a direct threat, and constantly create the most catastrophic scenarios in their minds. Machiavelli, however, would dissect these fantasies with the precision of a masterful surgeon, separating the wheat of truth from the chaff of fiction. The second key aspect of self-governance is the strategic control of one's emotions. Machiavelli never believed in suppressing feelings, in repressing or ignoring them. He firmly believed in their strategic use, transforming them into a powerful tool. Your emotions are an invaluable source of information about your environment and your true needs, yet they must never become commanders dictating your decisions. When you feel a surge of anger, ask yourself, what is this anger trying to tell me about this specific situation? How can I use this valuable information to make the best decision? When fear grips you, ask, is this fear based on a real, tangible danger or an imagined threat? If the danger is real, what is my most effective strategy for responding? The third fundamental element is the discipline of independent action. Machiavelli emphasized that truly effective leaders never waited for permission or approval from others to act. They clearly defined what needed to be done and proceeded without delay, taking full responsibility for all subsequent outcomes. This, of course, does not mean being reckless or completely ignoring valuable advice from others. It means possessing the inner courage to make decisions based on your own deep analysis and personal judgment, even when others disagree with your choice, or when you have no absolute guarantees of success. Uncertainty often paralyzes us because we constantly await external signals, confirming that it's safe to act. Machiavelli understood perfectly that such absolute certainty never arrives. Life is inherently full of uncertainty, and truly effective leaders learn to act despite this uncertainty, relying on inner strength rather than the illusion of complete safety. When an individual achieves and develops such a high level of self-governance, something truly remarkable happens. They cease to need external approval because their own approval comes from within, from their own conscious choice. They stop fearing others' judgment because their self-esteem does not depend on the opinions of those around them. They become genuinely, profoundly free. Machiavelli perfectly understood that life, in many of its manifestations, is a kind of war. Not a physical confrontation, but rather a psychological battle. A constant, unending competition for resources, for attention, for respect, and for new opportunities. The difference between those who emerge victorious in this unseen war and those who suffer defeat lies not in talent or luck, but in subtle psychological strategy. An insecure person enters this battle already internally defeated. They present themselves as a victim, signaling their weakness to potential predators and devaluing themselves in the eyes of potential allies. They wage an exhausting battle against ghosts born in their own minds, while real challenges and rivals advance in the material world. A Machiavellian leader enters this war with an entirely different mindset. They do not seek conflict for conflict's sake, but neither do they avoid it when it becomes absolutely necessary. They understand that some battles must be won at all costs to prevent much larger and more destructive wars in the future, and that the appearance of strength is sometimes far more important than its actual presence. The first and unwavering rule of Machiavellian psychological warfare is never to appear desperate. Desperation is like a scent that attracts precisely those who are ready to exploit your vulnerability, like sharks sensing prey. History knows many who tried to follow these principles. Some reached incredible heights, while others paid too high a price. Is it possible to completely free oneself from external circumstances, becoming the architect of one's destiny, without turning into a solitary ruler, cut off from all humanity? Or does such absolute freedom always demand sacrifices, leaving behind a trail of unfulfilled connections and missed opportunities? Write in the comments what you believe is the limit of this Machiavellian freedom and what its most terrifying test is. If this story resonated with you, support it with a like. And to not miss new chapters from the lives of those whose glory was authentic, but whose price was too high, subscribe to the channel. Sometimes, to gain true power, you need to look into the darkest corners of the human soul, where fear and insecurity are born. What if I told you that the great minds of the planet, whom we often consider unscrupulous, actually left us the key to unwavering confidence? A key capable of transforming anyone who feels trapped by their own doubts into the master of their destiny. Today, we will uncover secrets kept under lock and key for centuries, and learn how Machiavelli's ancient strategies can become your shield and sword in a world where everyone seeks to exploit your weakness. Are you ready to learn the price paid for this knowledge and what lies behind the facade of great leaders? Prepare yourself, for what you are about to hear will change your understanding of power and self-control forever. When a person lacks something, they must tirelessly work to fill that void, but never, under any circumstances, allow this deep need to become evident to others. This demands not just self-possession, but true mastery of emotional control. One must develop the ability to maintain an imperturbable and confident demeanor, even when a storm of anxiety and doubt rages within. This is not about hypocrisy or pretense, but about a carefully considered strategic approach to one's vulnerabilities, transforming them from weaknesses into invisible levers of influence. The second rule, carved in the stone of wisdom, states, choose your battles with extreme caution. The great Machiavelli shrewdly observed that inexperienced leaders often squander precious energy by engaging in petty, insignificant skirmishes, thereby weakening themselves and leaving themselves defenseless against truly momentous battles. People tormented by internal insecurity are particularly prone to this dangerous tendency, for they tend to perceive every trifle, every rustle, as an existential threat requiring an immediate and furious response. Cultivate the invaluable ability to unerringly distinguish fleeting inconveniences from genuine, serious threats. The vast majority of situations that make us feel awkward or insecure are actually just temporary, transient difficulties. These adversities, like clouds in a summer sky, can dissipate on their own if we exercise wisdom and do not overreact, fanning a spark into a flame. Machiavelli's third maxim is to always keep an ace up your sleeve, maintaining a veil of secrecy. He was obsessed with the idea of never revealing all his cards at once, never laying all his trump cards on the table. If people can predict your every move, your every decision in any situation with absolute accuracy, they can easily manipulate you or secretly act against your interest. This principle applies to both your skills and your true intentions. Be demonstrably competent, let your mastery be evident, but keep some of your best abilities in strategic reserve. Clearly state your values and principles, but keep your specific strategies and tactics in strict confidence. The fourth rule is to build strategic alliances. Machiavelli deeply understood that power destined for isolation is inherently vulnerable. Even the most brilliant and capable leader needs reliable allies to effectively navigate the intricate and complex systems of the world. However, he also recognized that not all alliances are equally valuable or useful. Seek partnerships based on mutual benefit, on cold calculation, rather than emotional need or blind attachment. The best alliances are those where both parties derive tangible benefits from cooperation and where mutual respect, born of demonstrated competence and reliability, prevails. The fifth, and perhaps one of the most vital rules, is to always have an exit strategy. Machiavelli lived in an era of extreme political instability, when alliances crumbled overnight and powerful leaders could fall in a matter of days. This harsh experience taught him to always leave himself alternative options, never to become so dependent on a single situation that he couldn't extricate himself if circumstances demanded it. This mindset deeply liberates those who suffer from insecurity, as they often feel trapped in unfavorable circumstances, unable to envision any alternatives. When you always have a plan B, you enter negotiations from a position of strength, not paralyzing fear. Psychological warfare, in Machiavelli's understanding, is not about crushing others, but about strategically positioning oneself so that destructive conflicts become simply unnecessary. When a person masters these fundamental principles, they discover that they can confidently and effectively navigate any social or professional situation, like an experienced captain guiding a ship through a storm. We have reached the culmination of this challenging but captivating journey. You have learned the true nature of insecurity, recognized the power of perception, mastered the strategy of reverse fear, delved into internal self-governance, and grasped the art of psychological warfare. Now it's time to bring all these disparate elements together to build what Machiavelli considered the ultimate goal of any true leader. Virtù, authentic and unwavering confidence founded on real competence and profound self-knowledge. Machiavellian virtù is by no means arrogance. Arrogance is merely empty confidence built on fragile illusions about oneself and the world. Virtù, however, is rooted in the ruthless reality of your true capabilities and the awareness of your limits. It is the difference between a castle built on sand that will crumble with the first gust of wind and an impregnable fortress standing on an unshakable rock. To develop this unwavering confidence, one must undergo three fundamental transformations that Machiavelli identified in all great leaders whose names entered the annals of history. The first transformation is the shift from a reactive state to a proactive one. Insecure people are constantly reacting to circumstances and the actions of others. They wake up each morning not knowing what to expect from the day, allowing external events to entirely dictate their mood, their decisions, and most importantly, their self-esteem. A person possessing Machiavellian virtù, however, acts completely differently. They begin their day with a clearly defined agenda based on their own deeply understood goals and unshakable values. This path to virtù, to unwavering confidence, is full of trials and internal battles. Perhaps you recognize yourself in those who wander in the labyrinth of insecurity, or conversely, felt echoes of those great individuals who dared to take their destiny into their own hands. What do you think was the most difficult step on this journey? Acknowledging your vulnerability, or learning to act when everyone around you expects you to fall? Write in the comments which of Machiavelli's principles seem most relevant to you in the modern world. If this story of life and transformation touched you, support us with a like. And to not miss new chapters from the fates of those whose glory was authentic, but whose price was incredibly high, subscribe to the channel. Are you ready to look behind the scenes of the greatest human destinies, where triumph and personal cost intertwine in unimaginable patterns? Today, we will reveal secrets that have stirred minds for centuries, mysteries capable of changing your perception of strength and vulnerability. You will learn how some, facing seemingly insurmountable barriers, not only survived but ascended to unattainable heights, while others, possessing everything one could wish for, lost themselves in the labyrinths of their own minds. We will discuss what propels a person from ordinariness to greatness, and what causes them to stumble when, it seemed, the whole world lay at their feet. Prepare for a journey full of unexpected twists, dramatic revelations, and deep reflections on how true power is formed and what its genuine, sometimes shocking, cost is. Watch until the end, for the most astonishing awaits you where the story seemingly concludes. He still responds to the challenges of fate, but these responses are always in harmony with his deep principles. He is far from rigid, yet he is not like a leaf susceptible to every gust of wind. Such a state requires a person to develop what the great Machiavelli aptly called prudence, a unique ability. To think strategically about the future while maintaining enough flexibility to skillfully adapt to new circumstances when the moment demands it. It is necessary to have a clear plan, but also to be ready to adjust it at any moment as soon as fresh, previously unknown information appears on the horizon. The second great transformation leads a person from a state of dependence to complete self-determination. Insecurity, like invisible shackles, binds us to a craving for approval, a constant need for validation of our significance and resources from others. This dependence places us in an inherently vulnerable position, as our well-being and success become hostages to factors over which we essentially have no control. Machiavelli, a perceptive thinker, emphasized that the most successful leaders tirelessly worked to reduce their external dependence. They created multiple income streams, built extensive networks of connections, and mastered numerous valuable skills. They did not avoid interaction with others, but they vigilantly ensured they never found themselves in a situation where a single person or a single circumstance could shatter their world. This self-determination extends far beyond material wealth, encompassing emotional validation as well. When a person develops the ability to affirm themselves based on their own criteria and internal values, they are freed from the desperate need for external approval that is so characteristic of insecurity. The third, perhaps the deepest and most difficult change, is the transformation from victim to the true architect of one's life. People tormented by insecurity tend to see themselves as prisoners of circumstances, their heredity, upbringing, economic situation, the actions of others. This victim mentality is fundamentally disempowering, for it surrenders the reins of your destiny into the hands of external forces. Machiavelli, however, offered a completely different, revolutionary perspective. He believed that while not everything is within our control, we always, absolutely always, have certain options for action. And it is precisely in these options, however insignificant they may sometimes seem, that our true power lies. The Machiavellian architect does not deny the existence of limitations and difficulties, but instead of despairing over what he cannot control, he obsessively focuses on what is within his power. He becomes a virtuoso of opportunities, tirelessly seeking ways to transform obstacles into advantages and impediments into stepping stones for ascent. This transformation requires the development of what modern psychologists call an internal locus of control. Instead of agonizingly asking that, why is this happening to me? You begin to ask, how can I use this for my own growth? Instead of, whose fault is this? You ask, what is my next step? When these three great transformations are complete, something truly extraordinary happens. Insecurity does not disappear without a trace. It transforms into something useful. Instead of being the source of paralyzing fear, it becomes a valuable source of information about areas where you need to develop or prepare better. You gain what Machiavelli called prudent boldness, the ability to take calculated risks based on careful analysis, not emotional impulse. You do not become reckless, but neither do you allow fear to shackle your will. What's more, you develop a deep inner calm that stems from the realization that no matter what happens, you have all the internal tools to cope with it. You don't need life to be simple or predictable to feel happy and successful. You become anti-fragile, one who not only survives the whirlwind of chaos, but emerges from it even stronger. 500 years after Machiavelli articulated his profound observations on power and human nature, we inhabit a world he could never have imagined. We have technologies bordering on magic, social systems of unparalleled complexity, and global challenges requiring entirely new forms of thinking and action. Machiavelli showed us the path to inner strength, to the ability not just to survive, but to truly flourish in a world full of uncertainty. He taught us that true power begins not with external conquests, but with an internal transformation. What if we all could undergo these three great transformations? How would our own lives and the world around us change? Perhaps we would see that true freedom is not the absence of limitations, but the ability to act despite them. Tell us in the comments which of the three transformations you find the most challenging and why. If these reflections on inner strength resonate with you, please give us a like. And to ensure you don't miss new stories about great destinies and their true cost, subscribe to the channel. Here we discuss those whose glory was genuine, but for which the price was immeasurably high. His name is whispered with both awe and condemnation. His works were once burned, and his followers persecuted. Niccolò Machiavelli, the architect of ruthless strategy, a man whose legacy is shrouded in scandal and intrigue. But what if, behind the veil of these terrifying myths, lies a truth so potent, so frank, that it could revolutionize your understanding of power, people, and yourself? Prepare to learn about principles that have for centuries remained the secret weapon of the chosen few, of those who dared to face the harsh reality of human nature. This is the story of how knowledge, once deemed dangerous, can become the key to your personal transformation. But are you ready to pay the price this truth demands? Watch until the end, and you will understand why the world still fears Machiavelli, and why you won't be able to forget his lessons. Over centuries, the scenery, costumes, and even methods of communication and business have changed. Yet beneath this shifting surface, the fundamental essence of humanity has remained untouched, like an ancient stone. People, just as they did 1,000 years ago, are still plagued by doubts, desperately seeking their place in the sun, yearning for influence, striving for social standing, and weaving webs of alliances and rivalries, driven solely by their own, sometimes illusory, interest. And the lessons Niccolò Machiavelli gleaned from his profound observations of this relentless human nature resonate today as piercingly and relevantly as they did in his lifetime. Only one thing has changed. Now, this knowledge, once accessible to only a select few, lies before you. You no longer have to carve your path through decades of bitter trials and painful mistakes, as the great Florentine did. You can apply these ancient truths immediately, like a key to a long-locked door of your own destiny, and very soon begin to feel the world around you change. However, there is one harsh rule. Knowledge not embodied in action remains merely an empty echo, no more than an amusing mental exercise. All these profound ideas you absorb today will only gain their true value and power when you dare to put them into practice, when they become the flesh and blood of your decisions. But this step on the path to transformation demands considerable courage. It requires the bravery to think differently from what is accepted, to act against expectations, and most challenging of all, to accept the inevitable. Some of those around you may be deeply displeased by the changes they see in you, as if you have broken some unspoken agreement. Machiavelli, more than anyone, understood that every genuine transformation, whether of an individual or an entire state, always generates a storm of resistance, both within a person and from without. His own manuscripts, these crystal-clear insights, were condemned to centuries of bans, brutal censorship, and deliberate distortion. Why me? Because they mercilessly shattered comfortable yet false notions about the world order. But despite all persecution these ideas endured, they survived because they were true. And truth, as is known, possesses an astonishing ability to break through any barriers, through any wall of misunderstanding and rejection. Your personal journey to transformation, to acquiring inner strength, will undoubtedly encounter similar, sometimes even more painful resistance. Loved ones, friends, family may feel sudden discomfort when you stop being the person who constantly craves their approval, as if it were air. Colleagues accustomed to your previous role might perceive your newfound confidence as a direct threat when you begin to engage in dialogue from a position of dignity and strength, rather than your former subservience or need. The bitter truth is that some of those around you may even try to undermine your endeavors, for your newfound confidence, like a bright light, will illuminate their own deeply hidden doubts and insecurities. And this, paradoxically, is perfectly normal, even predictable. Machiavelli himself would likely have noted that this is a sure sign. You are moving in absolutely the right direction. For when you dare to stop playing by outdated rules, those who have for centuries benefited from that old game will naturally rise to defend the familiar order, resisting change with their entire being, but never for a moment forget. You are undertaking all this not to impress anyone or to prove anything to anyone. Your path is a journey to true liberation, to shedding the invisible yet strong chains that have bound your boundless potential. You are walking this path to finally become who you truly are, not a mere reflection of others' expectations, not a puppet in the hands of those who wish to see you differently. A world tormented by uncertainty and weakness desperately needs more people possessing that very Machiavellian virtue, genuine prowess and effectiveness. We need those who skillfully combine deep competence with unwavering inner confidence, who make decisions based on unshakable principles and cold calculation, rather than irrational fears or fleeting emotions. We need leaders capable of leading by example, rather than passively waiting for someone else to show them the way. And now, as you finally embark on this path and become such a person, something astonishing happens. You don't just transform your own life. You become a powerful catalyst for the transformation of those around you. Your confidence, like a spark, ignites in the hearts of others, becoming contagious. Your impeccable competence inspires those around you to raise their own standards, to strive for more. And your unwavering integrity creates a kind of sanctuary around you, a safe space where others dare to be vulnerable, where they can show their true, authentic selves. This is the true, undistorted legacy of Niccolò Machiavelli, not the sinister, caricatured image of a ruthless manipulator that mass culture has so diligently created and propagated. No, this is the reality of a man who saw a profound truth. Real power is born from self-mastery, from the ability to control oneself in any situation. Effective leadership, as he understood, originates in deep self-knowledge. And true, unbreakable confidence is built on a solid, unshakable foundation of competence and impeccable integrity. Now, all the necessary tools are in your hands, and in your mind, a clear understanding of these ancient yet eternally relevant principles. Only one most crucial question remains, like an echo suspended in the air. Do you have the inner courage to go all the way and apply them? And the answer to this challenge does not necessarily have to be a loud yes, full of ostentatious bravado. Machiavelli himself never trusted empty, pompous gestures and inflated, dramatic declarations. He always preferred and valued only small but consistent, strategically calculated actions. Remember this, for it is in them that true strength lies. Perhaps this path to the true self, as Machiavelli spoke of it, will seem too difficult for you. Or conversely, you might feel that precisely such an approach can give you true freedom. What do you think? Is such a profound personal transformation worth the price that will have to be paid, the resistance that will have to be faced? Write in the comments, at what moment, in your opinion, can a person feel ready to apply these principles in their life? If this philosophy of change resonates with you, give it a like. And to avoid missing new stories about those who dared to go against the current, subscribe to the channel. Here we talk about real strength, but also about its true, sometimes cruel cost. Imagine a life where every step is a battle with an invisible enemy, where the voice of doubt whispers in your ear, paralyzing your will. What if I told you that the path to genuine strength and freedom has already been laid? That ancient wisdom, sometimes appearing cruel, is actually the key to your inner fortress? Today, we will unveil secrets that will allow you not just to survive, but to thrive, regardless of condemnation and fear. This is not merely a story, it is a guide to rebirth, where each of us can become the architect of our own destiny. Prepare to learn how to change the rules of the game and forever leave behind the specter of insecurity. The most interesting awaits you ahead. And so, a new chapter unfolds before you, where each of us becomes the strategist of our own life. Begin your journey small by choosing just one area where insecurity previously bound your actions, like invisible chains. Perhaps it was your professional arena, where for years you avoided presenting your ideas, fearing cold rejection or ridicule. Here, the great principle of self-governance comes into play. Pause, take a deep breath, and dispassionately, like an outside observer, weigh the real risks against the phantom dangers born only in your mind. Then, armed with this knowledge, prepare your proposal with impeccable competence, like a knight meticulously polishing his armor before battle. Present it to the world with a confidence that stems not from a craving for approval, but from the depth of your preparation and unwavering self-belief. This is not bravado, but the quiet dignity of strength. Or perhaps this struggle unfolded in the realm of personal relationships, where in an effort to avoid conflict, you unwittingly diminished your own importance, dissolving into others' expectations. In such a case, apply the principle of reverse fear strategy. Firmly but calmly establish your standards. Clearly communicate your expectations to the other person, and, no less importantly, demonstrate through your actions that you always have alternative paths if these sacred standards are not met. This is not a threat, but a declaration of self-respect. Or perhaps it was your personal odyssey, where you allowed the opinions of others to become a compass, determining every choice, leading you astray from your true path. Here, the principle of perception comes to your aid. Take the reins of your own narrative. Present yourself in a way that impeccably reflects your authentic values, and forever stop apologizing for who you truly are. This is your manifesto, your freedom. Remember that every single victory, no matter how tiny, becomes a powerful impulse propelling you toward the next triumph. Each moment you exhibit courage makes the next act of bravery just a little bit easier, as if you are carving a path through a dense forest. And every time you act based on your own deeply rooted values, rather than the paralyzing fear of others' judgment, you strengthen the very muscle responsible for genuine, unfeigned self-confidence. This is an invisible training, making you stronger each day. But do not think that Machiavelli himself was a serene sage, devoid of fears and doubts. His life path was full of harsh trials. He lost high positions, experienced exile from his homeland, and faced public humiliations that could have broken anyone. However, he never lost his astonishing capacity for observation, for tireless learning, and for flexible adaptation. He did not allow fleeting failures to make him doubt his fundamental principles, like a sturdy oak that bends but does not break under the force of a storm. True virtue, of which he spoke, is not the absence of fear. Oh no, it is decisive action performed despite fear, through it. It is not the absence of failures. It is the invaluable ability to extract profound lessons from every setback, transforming defeat into a stepping stone to future victories. It is not the absence of criticism, but the wise ability to discern where is constructive feedback that can aid your growth, and where are destructive attacks that should simply be ignored as empty noise. In the coming days, weeks, and months, many opportunities will open before you to put these principles into practice. Sometimes you will be close to the truth, sometimes you will err, and this is absolutely normal. It is expected. Machiavelli himself, throughout his distinguished career, made misjudgments more than once. The only difference is that he viewed each such error not as proof of personal inadequacy, but as valuable data, as a crucial source of information for making future, more informed decisions. Keep a mental record of the situations in which you dared to apply these principles, and carefully track the results you obtain. Observe how strikingly differently people react when you act with genuine inner confidence, rather than with one that merely masks deep insecurity. Notice how completely different you will feel when you make decisions dictated by your own unshakable values, instead of desperately seeking external approval. Over time, these new patterns of behavior will become part of your nature, as natural as breathing. You will no longer have to consciously remind yourself to apply Machiavellian principles. They will become an integral part of your thinking, your soul, and every action you take. And the insecurity that once dominated your thoughts will transform into a distant, barely audible voice that you can easily ignore. And when you reach that cherished point, when looking back, you realize with astonishment how much you have grown, remember, your journey does not end there. The world around is full of people who struggle with the same internal doubts and insecurities that you once faced. Your transformation is not just a personal victory, it is a living, breathing example that change is possible for everyone. You do not have to become a preacher or a mentor. Simply live by these principles, sincerely and authentically, in your very life. Will become the most powerful demonstration that a real alternative to fear and insecurity exists. Some people will inevitably notice these amazing changes in you and, driven by curiosity, will ask how you did it. And when that moment comes, you will have a precious opportunity to pass these invaluable lessons on. This is where the true, profound power of Machiavellian philosophy lies. It does not simply transform individuals. It spreads, like ripples on water, through networks of relationships, creating waves of positive change capable of affecting entire communities. Everyone who frees themselves from the shackles of insecurity eases that path for everyone else. This story is not about the greatness of leaders, but about the inner battle of each of us for our true essence. Machiavelli showed that even amidst personal catastrophes, one can find a path to incredible strength. But what is the price of such a rebirth? Is this freedom from fear and others' opinions worth the effort in constant opposition? What do you think? Which of the principles we discussed today would be your most powerful weapon in the fight against insecurity, and which the most challenging test? Share your thoughts in the comments. If this story resonated with you, support us with a like. And to avoid missing new chapters about the destinies of those who dared to live by their own rules, subscribe to the channel. Here we talk about true strength, the bond that is born within. He stood on the threshold of a new life, but the path to it was paved with the debris of the past, sometimes concealing shameful secrets. What terrible event transpired that forced him to reevaluate every step, every thought? What demons tormented him from within? And why did the world, which seemed so reliable, suddenly collapse beneath his feet, exposing his vulnerability? Today, we will tell the story of a man who dared to gaze into the abyss of his own soul to destroy what had bound him for years, turning his existence into a series of compromises. The price of this inner battle proved unimaginable, but the triumph promised to be great. Could he maintain balance on the precipice when every choice could lead to disaster, and one wrong decision could shatter everything that had been so painstakingly built? Watch until the end to discover how one man rewrote his destiny, becoming the architect of his own future. But at what cost? And so, a new path unfolded before him, paved with lessons he had forged in the crucible of trials. The time had come not just to know, but to act, embodying every realization into reality. He was to elevate himself to the rank of sovereign over his own inner kingdom, where chaos and insecurity had once reigned. This was not an easy campaign, but painstaking work to cultivate virtues that were to become his support. For it was through them that he gained not only unshakable confidence in his abilities, but also became truly competent, unyieldingly honest, and capable of making a genuine, positive contribution to a world that once seemed hostile or indifferent to him. This was a promise to himself, no longer to be a hostage to circumstances, but to become their creator. The great Machiavelli, a perceptive observer of human nature, once subtly noted that fickle fortune favors only the bold. However, with all his wisdom, he also deeply understood true courage is by no means a reckless impulse, a blind bravado that leads to inevitable ruin. On the contrary, Genuine courage is born from a readiness to act, relying on meticulous preparation, carefully considered steps, and unwavering principles forged in the fire of life's tribulations. Now the hero had both, invaluable gifts obtained at the cost of his own mistakes and insights. The only question was how. Wisely he would manage this arsenal, for not only his fate, but also the fates of those who believed in his transformation depended on it. The future, that eternal battlefield and creation ground, always has and always will belong to those who have the audacity and courage not just to dream of it, but to actively create it, wresting it from the clutches of oblivion. And he, now armed not just with knowledge, but with the timeless lessons of one of history's greatest strategists, was more ready than ever before to become one of the architects of this future. His former insecurity, that internal paralysis that bound him hand and foot, was finally destroyed, scattered to dust. But at what cost was this victory achieved? Now, on the ruins of his old self, he was to build something grand, and what he would erect in its place would become not just a measure of his character, but an enduring legacy of his entire life. To make it worth all the effort, all the anxieties, all the pain, that was his main task, his personal triumph or his ultimate tragedy. He rose again, like a phoenix from the ashes. But what a heavy burden of responsibility came with this newfound strength. Was this monumental struggle against his own shadows worth the losses he left behind, or the wounds that will long serve as reminders of his past? What do you think was the most challenging aspect of his journey? Admitting his mistakes, confronting the truth about himself, or finding the superhuman strength to start anew when his world was crumbling around him? Let us know in the comments, which moment of his transformation do you find most significant, and which choice, in your opinion, became the pivotal turning point? If this story resonates with you, or if you've ever battled your own inner demons, show your support with a like. And to ensure you don't miss new stories about those who dared to transform their lives, enduring immense challenges, subscribe to the channel. Here we explore the true strength of the human spirit, the cost of both triumphs and setbacks, and the often unimaginable price one pays on the journey to finding their true self.